What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Gould's Gaming and Tech channel. We have a new video, a highly requested video, I should say. Something you guys been asking for in the comments. I did recently post, not too long ago, a couple videos about this AOC gaming monitor that I recently purchased, and I primarily purchased it for the performance aspect of it and to get, you know, a little bit better experience out of some of my online games like, you know, Fortnite, Call of Duty, so on and so forth. So a lot of you guys have been asking me what's the best settings to put the monitor on. After looking back at the videos, I didn't really discuss, you know, the best settings for a particular game because it was more so about the purchasing experience, the review, how it kind of performed and everything like that, the pricing of it, budget, so on and so forth, and what console might be better for it. But in this video, we're going to actually talk about the best settings to put it on. We're going to swing over to this monitor and I'm going to show you guys the settings setup and just a little bit more information about each particular setting. By the way, if you guys are new to the channel and you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you're new or returning, make sure to hit that like button. It's definitely appreciated. It's the best way that I and YouTube knows you guys enjoy these kind of videos, and that's pretty much how this video came about. You guys liked the previous videos, you subscribed, and you commented saying, hey, we want to see this kind of video. So all right, so for those of you who don't know, this is the AOC CQ32G3SE monitor. If you're looking for this one, it's a great budget friendly monitor, but it also has some good specs that you might want when it comes to your particular gaming setup and experience. So if you want to know all the specs that it comes with, the pricing and everything, feel free to check out my video in the description below about my unboxing and my review of it. I pretty much run down all the specs of it and, you know, some information that you might want to know. So first things first is you're gonna have some buttons under the right bottom part of the monitor. So here's my right hand right here. The one to your furthest right is the power button. So if I click that, it turns the monitor off. The next button after that is the one to the left of the power button, which is the menu and select button. So if you click that, it will bring up the settings menu. This pretty much is as big as it gets on your screen. The button right next to the power button to the left of the power button is the select button and the menu button. And then the button to the left of that button is left. The button to the left of that is right. And the button to the left of that, which is the last one, is pretty much the exit button. And you can pick between which setup you want. So if you can see right here, it says HDMI 1, HDMI 2, and DP, which is display port, so you can kind of shuffle through. So this first one is the Luminance, and if I continue to click on this button, it's because the display kind of times out after a while. So if you click on it, see, as you can see right there, the display goes away about after 10 seconds maybe. One thing that I will say that kind of sucks about this monitor, which is pretty much the only thing, is that it doesn't have speakers on it, and also it does not have a designated remote for it. You're gonna always have to use headphones when trying to hear any audio on this, and also you don't have a remote, so you have to physically touch the buttons under here. Those are only two takeaways on it. Outside of that, everything is good. So let's bring up this menu again. As you can see, you have Luminance, and this is where one of the main or most important parts of the monitor is. As you can see right here, it says HDR. So when you select certain settings on the HDR menu, everything else is grayed out, which means you cannot select those settings. So what I mean by that is there are certain settings that are on that Luminance setting. You have HDR game, HDR display, HDR movie, HDR picture, and then you have off. What I would recommend if you guys are playing an online game, say like Call of Duty, where you don't need it to be super crisp, but you want it, you know, smooth enough and not janky enough where it looks well, I would recommend you guys put your monitor in HDR game, so that helps you with your latency time and, you know, your millisecond response time. So this is what I usually do. I go to the display settings, put it in performance mode, and this is just the preferred or prioritized settings. So it says it prioritizes performance, and if I switch it to resolution, it'll prioritize resolution. But for Call of Duty, I want to prioritize higher frame rates. I would go to display right here and put this on HDR game. Everything else is grayed out because it's in that HDR settings. So as you can see right here, the picture still looks pretty good, but it's going to prioritize a more performance-based interaction when you're using this game mode. Obviously, I did change the PlayStation settings, and that's something you're gonna have to notice you're gonna constantly have to do depending on what game you're playing. This is primarily for performance, so I'm going to switch my PlayStation to performance. The picture quality doesn't really drop off that bad, so you still get a good display when you're playing this game. All right, so now we switch to a game that is more about resolution and the quality of the display. It's not so much the response time, it's more so frames per second and just the fidelity of the actual image itself. So we have Spider-Man 2 loaded up right here. So again, in this mode, I put my PlayStation on resolution mode. You can have it in either one, but I'd rather it favor the resolution for this game in particular. But when it comes to your display, the AOC display, it can be in that HDR game setting, which is not bad, but if you want a better look of this game, again, off is just turning everything off, and you can change those settings yourself. But then if you click on display HDR, then you notice it will change the image slightly. It will kind of mute certain things, but it is more so giving you a crisp image. That's the primary focus of that setting right there. So then if you click on this again and click on display and you go to HDR picture, if you click on that again, it's still focusing on that fidelity of it, but it brightens your image a little bit, and this is again your preference. But remember, with any of these settings, you can go into the menu and you can change your setting. You can change the actual visual settings for that particular game. So earlier, like we spoke about with Call of Duty, or even with this game, yeah, I can change the settings on my display, I can change the settings in my PlayStation, but the actual game itself will have preferences on how you want your performance and your visual quality to be, so you can change those as well. So all of those things are going to contribute to the actual image, the crispness and the response time, the frames per second, all that with your display. So keep that in mind. None of these settings are end all be all. You kind of have to play with them to see what is best for you. Again, if we go back into the menu and we're on HDR picture, HDR or display HDR was a little bit more muted, but if we click on HDR picture, it's a little bit brighter. It's still focusing on the quality of that image. And if you go to HDR movie, it makes it even brighter than that, but it's more so for a movie experience when you're just watching like videos on YouTube or something like that. It's not necessarily meant for gaming. So that was the Luminance tab. You do have some grayed out tabs right here. As you can see, these are going to be dependent on what you have hooked up to your monitor. So if you're running it, I'm running a PlayStation right now, a PS5. If you have an Xbox or if you have a PC, some of those boxes are going to be lit up for you. It's going to give you a little bit more options, but since I'm using the PlayStation and I have certain settings set up, it's going to read what's connected to it and give me the appropriate boxes for me to kind of mess with things. So back in the menu, and again, this is the on-screen display. That's what OSD setup means, on-screen display. So that's basically this bar right here. So how do you want this to show up? You can move it around, you can make it, you know, time out at a certain time, change the system language. If you speak a different language, you can change the language of all this stuff to whatever language you like. Again, like I said, make it time out. Your display port capability, if you're using that actual port, the HUD position, you can move it like left to right, things like that. The volume, transparency of this display, this little bar, and then a break reminder. So then you go back and then you go to the next setting, which is the game settings. Now, this is probably one of the most important settings on here. You're going to be playing games on here. So it says game mode off right now. And again, this is all in conjunction with the HDR settings, 4K settings, and everything that you already have preset on your monitor and on your console as well. Low input lag. So I want low input lag on. I do not want a high input lag. So that's why you want to turn that on. That's more so for Call of Duty and online games. Like I said earlier, you have AMD FreeSync. Again, this monitor does come with FreeSync, so why not have that on if you have that option? And then frame counter. I don't really care for my frame counter to be on. So if you go right here to extra, here's where you select a couple of things and you notice a lot of things. So right here, for example, input select, again, you can switch between HDMI 1, 2, or that display port. Your off timer, you can pretty much set this to turn off at a certain time. Your image ratio, I wouldn't mess with this too much. It's going to preset to wide, which is pretty much going to fill up the entire display. If you change it from there, then it will make your ratio look very wonky. So if I click on this and change it to something else, as you can see, this is the 1:1 setting. I do not want that, so let's change that back to wide. You can have a reset on here, and then as you can see to your bottom right here, your resolution. This is again one of the main things you're going to want to pay attention to. This will change depending on what game you're playing and what settings you have set for your display on your game. So if you're looking for a variable refresh rate, the resolution, this changes. So don't think it's set at this 1920 by 1080. That is not the case. I have a TV, a 4K Sony TV right above this monitor, so I don't really play like adventure games or RPG games on this monitor. I primarily use this for online games because this monitor is performance based. It will go into 4K if you're playing certain games and depending on how you have your settings, but based on the settings that I last had it on for my other TV up here, it's showing it at 1920 by 1080. All right, you guys, so we have the Harry Potter game loaded up. So if I go to the settings here, just to show you guys the difference, it's on HDR game right now. And if we go all the way to extras, you will see that the display settings change for this. Now the resolution is now 3840 by 2160, and the frequencies with the hertz, it is at 134. This changes depending on what game you have currently playing and also the settings that you have set for that particular game. So if I go to the settings for this game I have the display on fidelity with ray tracing. So this option in this game is going to give me different options on my display to kind of work with. Just keep that in mind. It all kind of intermingles with one another. This is just to give you guys a little rundown on how to go about setting your settings and, you know, not being overwhelmed with the options that it gives you and realizing it's going to be different. Let me know if you guys have any questions down below in the comments. Again, I still recommend this monitor. It's a great monitor for online gaming, and if you do want to play some RPG or adventure type gaming, it's not necessarily online. Just tweak those settings a little bit to give you a more crisper image. Performance over fidelity. If you remember that and you're cool with that, this monitor is perfectly fine for you. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.